This talk was given by Roshi Rafe Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, January 10th, 2026. And as I mentioned earlier this morning in the little couple of minutes talk during the first round of sitting, it's a very dark time in our country, which means it's a very difficult and dark time in our own minds. Our own minds are the country. It's not like we're separate from it at all, nor is anyone. Of course, people who fall into fascism have forgotten our fundamental connection to life itself. The cause of our sorrow is ego delusion. From dark path to dark path we've wandered in darkness. How can we be free from the wheel of samsara? The gateway to freedom is Zazen Samadhi, beyond exaltation, beyond all our praises, the pure Mahayana. This is not concept, it's not idealism. It's simply to clarify our own mind, to find our own connections with all living things, is to reject fascism and the selfishness, the fear underlying it somehow. Only gaining power can bring you freedom, no matter the harm it causes to the world, to other beings, even to yourself. It's a terribly sad predicament for human beings at this crucial time in the life of our environment, really. To re-explore from dark path to dark path. We've wandered in darkness, seeking some way to preserve ourselves, even at the cost of harming others, is terribly sad. What a, what's it called? Not rejection so much as what a failure to be a full human being. What a failure to think by harming and gaining power, you will somehow be happy and escape impermanence, old age, sickness, death. What a short-sighted, childish thing that causes so much harm. So that's what we're in for. As I've mentioned earlier, I think the next couple of months are going to be very difficult. As a cornered person tries everything to evade the consequences of their own thoughts and deeds, which in the end no one does. In any case, I want to reread to you a brief quote from Teisho. Really, to remember what we're doing. It's not lofty. It's not a huge conceptual effort. It's not about gaining wonderful thoughts, though those things tend to come along in practice, but it really almost doesn't matter what thoughts you have. Painful, happy, up or down. We continue to pay attention to whatever's arising, and in that we find a fundamental freedom. So here's Teisho. His Japanese name would be Isan. His dates are 771 to 853. He was the teacher of Shengyen, who you may remember from The Man Up a Tree, case 5, I believe, of the Gateless Barrier. And Teisho was the one who kicked over the water bottle and then was sent to build a monastery on the forbidding heights of Mount Quay, which is where he got his name. So he wrote, or said, probably didn't write it, "In the 30 years I've been on Mount Quay, I've eaten the food of Mount Quay and shat the shit of Mount Quay, but I haven't studied the Chan, that is the Zen, of Mount Quay. I've just watched over an ox. If it wandered off the path into the weeds, I pulled it out. If it roamed into people's gardens, I drove it out with a switch. Eventually, it came to understand quite well and has turned into a white ox standing on open ground, always present, not running off even if I try to chase it away. What we're doing is tending an ox. Famous Zen ox herding pictures. Your own mind is unruly. It's powerful. We return to discount. No, I want to wander over here. I want to think about that. We return to this breath. We return to the being present to whatever is going on. We take the nose rope of the ox, count by count, breath by breath, koan by koan. We don't try and stop anything. We don't try and force anything away. We just tend to the ox. It's simple. Doesn't make it easy, but we keep doing it. And by doing it, we do something for this world, whether we know it or not. By clarifying our own mind, we bring something into this society, this culture. We also bring some ease to our own hearts. We have a day dedicated to tending the ox. Let's do our best. And so with that, we'll return to finding your Buddha's smile, coming home to what Zen is really all about. We read through the thanks and the introduction last time, and now we will pick up with chapter 1. The Buddha shows the path. Just note, an earlier version of this chapter appeared in an earlier book of mine from 2017, before Buddha was Buddha, learning from the Jataka tales. So we'll start off not with the koan, but with the Jataka. And we'll start with the Buddha. Not the smiling finished product, poised and at ease in full lotus. Instead, we'll look at a brief and rather strange, indeed almost science fiction-y, traditional Jataka or past life story of the Buddha. The tale relates that in a far distant past, world ages back, the Buddha was a powerful, even godlike king, who sought personal happiness above all else, and that it was only, get this, when his self-centered quest came to its painful end, the Buddha did this too, was self-centered, built a whole life around it, and found it didn't work. Only then was he able to engage with a deeper, more satisfying path. He had to go through the one to get to the other, which seems rather hopeful in the long run. Tradition holds that he told this odd little Jataka to his Sangha as his own death, that is his parinirvana, approached. It was part of a final, compassionate effort to help others, even as he was heading towards his own deathbed. A bit of Jataka background. Traditionally, the Buddha is considered to have been the narrator of the Jataka tales. That is, stories of his own many lifetimes' journey toward complete and perfect enlightenment. He's said to have told them to resolve issues in his Sangha and to inspire his followers. The Jataka tales were canonical within 100 years of his death and didn't appear as written text, however, until around 400 CE, Common Era, which is about 800 years after his death. They were oral tradition for quite a long time then, and were immensely popular throughout Buddhist Asia. Scholar Giuseppe Tucci, traveling in pre-communist Tibet, recounts his astonishment at seeing the roughest sort of men, caravaneers and mule drivers, breaking down and weeping like babies when Jataka tales were told around their campfires at night. I mean, these were really tough guys, and they hear Jataka tales and they start sobbing. they had this tremendous impact in all the Buddhist countries. While many of the oral tales have been lost, two textual strands survive to this day. And that's the Pali Jataka of 547 such tales, and the 34 stories of a much more purposefully inspirational and deeply influential Mahayana Sanskrit text, the Jataka Mala, or garland, or rosary of Jatakas, which is attributed to Aryashura, a noted Buddhist writer. Jatakas also exist around the year 400 is when they also came out. Jatakas also exist in Nepalese texts, in Scythian Khotanese verses, in sutras, in noble giving Avadana literature, as well as in numerous carvings and paintings at monumental Buddhist sites like Ajanta, Sanchi, Dunhuang, Lungmen, Borobudur, and others. So here's this weirdly science fiction-y short little Jataka, which is number 258 in the Pali Jataka of 547 such stories. It goes like this. Long ago, in the early ages of the world, so far back now there is no way of computing it, there lived a king named Mahasamata, who had a son named Roja, who had a son named Varoja, who had a son Kalyana, who had a son Varakalyana, who had a son named Uposta, and Uposta had a son named Mandata. When grown, Mandata was so great a monarch, he could make a rain of jewels fall from a clear blue sky by simply clenching his left hand into a fist and touching it with his right. We're dealing here, of course, with mythic realities, and let's enjoy it. Nothing need be completely literal. Then again, who knows what was possible? I don't take it away. It could be. In any case, for 84,000 years, he was the prince of the land. For 84,000 years, he helped his father, the king, rule. For another 84,000 years, he was king himself, ruler of the world. His glorious life lasted for ages, its radiance and majesty undimmed. One day he found he could not satisfy some desire. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? One day he found he could not satisfy some desire. Very human. What it was is now impossible to say. There are no records of what it was. All we know is that for the very first time, and here's the point, he experienced discontent. He had never experienced discontent before. It really was a kind of perfect life, wasn't it? "What ails you, Lord?" asked an attendant, seeing frown lines forming on that great monarch's face. "My merit is great," said the king. Remember, there's the Buddha in a past life. "No one's greater. Yet I find I am no longer satisfied. Is there some realm better than this, more worth the desiring? Do you know?" "Heaven, Lord," answered the attendant. "There, it is said, all desires are fulfilled and no one is dissatisfied. Here on earth, truth be told, we face much that is barely tolerable." As we know, there are religions whose aim is to get to heaven. Sounds very satisfying. All desires are fulfilled and no one's dissatisfied. A nice alternative dimension to life on earth. Anyway, if heaven is best, said Mandata, the Buddha in a distant past life, how can I be happy remaining here? Heaven is where I must go. Gathering a retinue, off he went in his great spinning wheel of empire. Rising up and up until he reached the starry heaven of the four great celestial kings. The four great kings of heaven, bearing celestial flowers, perfumes, and jeweled robes, attended by a company of shining gods, welcomed Mandata. Showering him with heavenly delights, they showed him the wonders of their heaven. Then, in recognition of his immense store of merit, they gave him rule over it, as well as over themselves. And he was happy. And for many long ages he remained so, perfectly happy, perfectly content. But then, after long ages had passed, a day in heaven may equal many hundreds or thousands of years on earth, there came a time when he could not satisfy some desire. Big or small what it was, who can say? Lines of frustration appeared on his brow. His mouth assumed a downward curve. Is this it then? Is this all? Is this the best? He asked. Is there nothing more? Oh no, my lord, answered the 4 celestial kings. Compared to those who dwell above us in the heaven of the 33, we are like servants or common working men. There is no comparison at all. That realm is more perfect, more beautiful, more splendid by far. I cannot believe I've not known this until now, exclaimed Mandata in surprise. I must go there. Farewell. And with his court around him, he again set the wheel of empire spinning and ascended to the heaven of the 33. There Chakra, king of the gods, surrounded by great gods of magnificent beauty and splendor, welcomed Mandata, giving him all he desired. But Mandata's eldest son, saluting his father, took the wheel of empire and descended back to the realms of men and came again to his own city, while his father Mandata stayed on happy, very, very happy, to be in the glorious heaven of the 33, where all desires are fulfilled. Chakra himself, pleased by that great king's delight, gave him half of that shining kingdom to rule alongside him. And so they ruled together in splendor and joy. 30 million years they ruled, until that Chakra's karma was exhausted. And he was born back to this earth, and another Chakra arose and ruled in that high heaven alongside the undying earthly king, Mandata. In this way, 36 Chakras came and went, and countless world ages rolled by, while Mandata, still in his own human body, ruled on beside each successive Chakra in that perfectly heavenly realm. Then a desire arose in Mandata's mind, and this desire we do know. It was the desire to rule by himself alone. Why should I share this splendid heaven, he thought. Why not fulfill my desire and do as I please? Gosh, this sounds terribly familiar, doesn't it? Why not fulfill my desire and do as I please? I have outlived 35 Chakras. I should be rid of this current one, for what is he but another in an endless line of such kings of the gods, and rule on my own? I desire it. I will fulfill my desire. And with that single, self-centered thought, the power of unending life in him began to fade, and old age seized him. As a human body cannot die or disintegrate in heaven, he fell back to earth, like a meteor burning across the night, landing in a park, living still, but very, very old and very, very weak, ancient as dust. A gardener, having seen this fiery descent, ran to where the burning star fell, but instead of a star, he was surprised to find a very old man, wearing glittering jewels and a robe of shining gold. At once the gardener set off to alert the royal family. Quickly they came, gathered around the old king, for such they saw he must be. Mandata, opening his rheumy eyes, looked upon those gathered around him. King and queen, princes, princesses, and nobles. I am Mandata, he said, king of kings. I ruled the great earth in my time. Then I ruled in both the lower and higher heavens for the lifetimes of 36 chakras, kings of the gods. What can you know of that? It is too many years to begin to count. Now I die, but desire outlives me. There is no end to it. This I know for myself, and for sure I have gone the limit. No one can go further in attempting to satisfy desire. But it shall not be so forever. I will return to this, our Saha world, our bearable, challenging world, where effort leads to liberation and work to be free of desire, no longer its slave, but its master. With that, the great monarch Mandata, who had been king of kings, not only here on earth, but in heaven, the Buddha himself, in a distant past life, passed from that existence to fare on, as the Jatakas say, according to his own thoughts and deeds. So, there's a weird little science fiction-y, and yet very telling Jataka about self-centeredness and how we all have to emerge from it and grow beyond it, even the Buddha. So traditionally, Buddhists think of the Buddha as the paragon of all goodness, wisdom, and virtue. Yet Jataka tradition shows that it took even him countless lifetimes to fulfill his aspiration to awaken fully and be of benefit to all. Like us, the Buddha matured by trying, falling down, getting back up, and trying again, revealing that ongoing effort is the essence of the way. A more complex version of this Jataka appears in the Divya Vedana, a collection of Avadana, or noble giving past life stories of the Buddha and other great practitioners. Additionally, it is in that version that we learn that the Buddha told this story at or near the time of his parinirvana or death. So brief and odd as it is, as the last or among the last Jatakas he ever told, it gains in both poignancy and depth. Its very briefness suggesting these are near deathbed words, told at a time when every breath counted. At that emotionally charged time, that more complex version reveals that the Buddha introduced this story by saying this. In a previous time, Ananda, remember Ananda was his cousin, who had a perfect memory. In fact, all the Buddha's sutras, the oral teachings that he gave during his lifetime, open with, "Thus have I heard," which are the words of Ananda, whose memory was so perfect he could repeat word for word what was said. And in a previous time, Ananda, I was filled with attachment. Get this. I was filled with attachment, with hate, filled with attachment, with hate. This is the Buddha speaking. And with delusion. One of the great things about Buddhist tradition is it doesn't make the Buddha out to be some perfect being who descended from on high. He was a human being who began like all of us and simply at one point had enough and made up his mind to do something about it. And that doing was to practice realization and awaken and be of benefit ultimately to all. And it took a long time and a lot of work. In a previous time, Ananda, I was filled with attachment, with hate, and with delusion, and wasn't liberated from birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, suffering, grief, or despair. However, experiencing the presence of death, I delivered a sermon on karma, such that many hundreds of thousands of beings left behind the household life and went forth as seers would do. That's a quote from that longer version. Then, by way of illustration, he tells the Mandata Jataka. But in the story, as it appears in the Pali Jataka collection, which is the basis of our version, the one I just shared with you, he doesn't address many hundreds of thousands of beings, but only a small group. However, given the 2,500 years since this Jataka was first told or shared, Who knows how many, having heard or read it, were, to one degree or another, able to leave off self-centered living. The numbers may add up. One core teaching embodied by this little Jataka seems universal. Winston Churchill supposedly put it like this: success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. In short, keep going. The Buddha is said to have counseled, as regards the spiritual life, there are only two errors you can make. One mistake is not starting. The other is not continuing all the way. This has occasionally resurfaced in our time as one mistake would be not starting and the other not continuing. And while this is succinct and clever, it misses an essential point. Going all the way tells us not to be satisfied with small gains and minor insights. The fundamental truth of the Buddha's teaching is liberation. Only full enlightenment can put to rest, or only full enlightenment put to rest his own considerable terrors of impermanence. If you know the story of the Buddha's leaving home, he left because he was totally freaked out upon discovering the terrible injustice of human life. Aging, sickness, and death as conscious beings, to know this is terrifying. Deep down. Probably one of the reasons that people turn to things like fascism. Somehow it will give them security. Somehow they won't be subject to the grief, lamentation, and suffering of aging, sickness, and death. Good luck. In any case, for him, only full enlightenment put that to rest. This core of personal experience is where Zen takes its stand. Enlightenment, the birthright of us all, if we only knew it, is not reserved for those with unique talents or special virtues. It is our own original mind, our own nature. This is why for Zen practitioners, the Buddha's life story is not a matter of ancient history from 2,500 years ago, but is of vital importance now because it shows what's possible for each of us. To let go, to see through the conditioning that's so impressed in our own minds of isolation, separation, fears, whatever it is. We all have it. We've all been conditioned, educated, taught by parents. We all carry with us the stain or stamp or impressions of who knows how far back into history and time such things go. I really don't, but certainly there are indications that we all carry memories, whether they're genetic or karmic. In any case, the words that Buddhist tradition ascribes to the Buddha at the moment of his great enlightenment are, "Wonder of wonders, all beings are Buddha. Only unconscious habits of self-centered, delusive thinking prevents the realization of this." The Buddha at the time of his enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree was not a novice in persisting and in going all the way. There are classic Jataka tales that demonstrate this. They're very dramatic and touching, like the hungry tigress, in which, as a sage, he offers his body to a starving tigress. He's going all the way to do what he can for another suffering being. It's kind of outrageous. And yet, what bounds are there to truly selfless compassion? We don't know. It's quite a stunning story, really. And then the banyan deer, in which he refuses personal safety until all the forest animals can be free. Even though he's been offered personal freedom, he won't take it again and again and again and again until all the beings of his realm of the forest, animals, are freed from the king's hunt. And then there's the brave parrot, where he risks his life to stop a forest fire with a few sprinkles of water, even though it seems an impossible task. Because he sees it's the one thing he can do. He does it, even at the risk of his own life. So there's a sense of going all the way that underlies his character. And he also knew about errors, as Jatakas like this one of the great king. Mandata make clear. There are even Jatakas in which the Buddha reveals not only past mistakes, but his past failures, where he failed. He got totally caught up in stuff, and he had to extricate himself and go on. He made mistakes, and he didn't hide them, and that, I think, is an extraordinary thing that the Jatakas show. This revered religious figure is shown to have been quite human and had to do exactly what we do, is learn from our mistakes, pick ourselves up, and go on. And you see that happening in the Jatakas. By selflessly exposing his own challenges, these stories become not simply tales of long-gone errors, but encouragements to each of us in our own work on ourselves now. Sure, we'll fall down and fail many times to uphold our highest ideals, and yet we'll try again and again and again, and that's how we improve. Sometimes, anyway, persistence or perseverance is shown to be the essence of the Buddha way. While our own efforts are not likely to lead to jewels streaming from the sky or million years of heavenly rule, nonetheless, like Mandata, here's the truth. We're going to find desire and its satisfaction or lack thereof a thorny issue throughout our life. Whether we're talking about fleeting lusts or desire for the newest iPad, desire will arise in our minds again and again and again and again. As the Rolling Stones classically complained, to be honest, I can't get no. So, give the self what it wants, and it soon wants more. Though we work to fill ourselves to the brim, quickly we feel deficient again. Must we, like Mandata, wait till we are on our deathbeds before we too realize that something has gone or is fundamentally awry? Clearly the Buddha hoped not, which seems to be why at the end of his life he told this revealing personal tale of the endlessness of desire. Blake wrote, and I always think of William Blake as our wise old man of the West, the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. By continuing on and making our mistakes to the full, we begin to learn what's worth doing and really what isn't. And this is one of his Proverbs of Hell from the short prophetic book, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. It looks like the Buddha would agree with Blake. He seems to have had no regrets about his millions of years of error in this story. He did what he needed to do, found out what he needed to find out, and moved on. He didn't wallow in self-pity or beat himself up over having wasted precious time. Like some scientist, his experiment arrived at its conclusion, a very clear conclusion. Nope, not this. Or like some ancient Picasso whose blue period had passed and he moves on to other colors, the Buddha's attitude seems to have been, I now personally know that this road that I'm now on doesn't lead where I want to go. Feeding desire cannot lead to happiness any more than drinking salt water can assuage thirst. I have gone the route no one can go further, and it is time to move on. Classical accounts of the Buddha's efforts to realize enlightenment all say that at one point he took up severe ascetic practices which included or culminated in eating only a single sesame seed a day as his food. His body became a wreck, his mind a disaster. Looking back at this painfully self-destructive time in a sutra, he says, no one had gone further in ascetic practices, but I came to the end of that road and found it did not lead to liberation. Here, in this Jataka, the opposite is true. Instead of attempting to punish the self-centered self, he attempts to satisfy it. Essentially, he explores hedonism, the opposite of asceticism. By going all the way to the end of each of these opposing paths, personally trying out to their limit, he establishes the middle way. Fulfillment, the essence of the middle way, means being neither too tight nor too lax. The middle way is not wishy-washy, but balanced, harmonious, satisfying. While Zen practice can at times be challenging, demanding, frustrating, even scary, its aim is greater happiness. The Bodhisattva, the Buddha in past lives on his way to full enlightenment, is the Bodhisattva, capitalized, has the mind of an explorer, pathfinder, artist, or scientist, breaking new trail to find out for himself whether a promising route leads to where he wants to go or not. He shows that mistakes are fundamental to maturing. Roshi used to say, as long as we are doing our best, no sincere effort is ever wasted. To quote Samuel Beckett's worst word, ho, ever tried, ever failed. No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. One eerie aspect, this is to wander a little into the weeds, remains its extraordinary view of time and space. Millions of years go by as the Bodhisattva reigns in heaven in his own human body. How weird is that? Given that vast stretch of time, what kind of earth did he leave? Were dinosaurs roaming beyond his palace walls? Was the city in India or Atlantis? As we peered down into the dark backward and abysm of time, and upwards to where heavens are piled upon heavens, immense vistas of time and space open to us in this odd little tale. It's kind of opens up odd little doorways beyond our normal sense of time and space. And what's with that wheel of empire in which Mandata flies to the heavens? It seems suspiciously like a UFO or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena as they're known these days. Aerial cars or flying machines in which devas or gods visit our world to hear the Buddha's teachings are mentioned in sutras. There is even a Jataka, number 159 in the Pali Jataka, in which the Buddha is a talking peacock who's captured by a human king, and he reveals in a distant past life he had been even a greater king than the king who caught him. Sic transit gloria mundi. Prove it, says the skeptical human king. The Bodhisattva peacock then directs the human king to drain the lake beside his palace, and he tells him that a jeweled flying machine that he, the peacock Bodhisattva, had used in that past distant life when he was a great king, will be found buried in the mud at the bottom of the lake. So the king orders the lake drained, and lo and behold, an ancient jeweled flying machine is uncovered. That's in a 2,500-year-old Buddhist story. Curiouser and curiouser, says Alice. And speaking of Wonderland, whatever may have taken place in the distant past on this earth, our understanding of our planet's history remains obscured by the rise and fall of mountains, the shifting of continents, the drying and flooding of seas, everything, beings, worlds, galaxies, universes, Buddhist teachings tell us, comes and goes. However, Arya Shura, author of the influential Jatakamala, states that something does persist. And here's what he writes. Earth with its forests, noble mountains and seas may perish 100 times by fire, water, and wind as each eon comes to an end. But the great compassion of a bodhisattva, never. Earth with its forests, noble mountains, and seas may perish 100 times by fire, water, and wind, as each eon comes to an end. But the great compassion of a bodhisattva, never. That's from the great ape Jataka in Once the Buddha Was a Monkey, which is Peter Koroch's translation of the Jatakamala. So according to Buddhist tradition, the aspiration to awaken and live so as to benefit all beings is woven into the nature of reality, is in fact the nature of our own original, unself-centered mind. Given this, the effort we put into trying to satisfy a small, self-centered, fundamentally illusory narrative of isolated selfness must meet with defeat. In the end, all tyrants fall. They must fall. The amount of suffering they can cause on the way there, though, is like a mountain. With this little Jataka, the Buddha reveals that he himself had trod that same delusive trail of self-centeredness to its end. And having gone the route at trail's end, he's put up a marker for all to see. Warning! You can never satisfy desire. If he's right, and this is true, not simply a tenet of Buddhist belief, we should find it in the stories and wisdom traditions of other cultures as well. And indeed, perhaps you remember the Grimm's brothers' tale of the fisherman's wife? I'll give you a synopsis with one caveat. Please withhold criticism of the wife's, or the narrative's rather, misogyny. The wife is cast in a very bad light. And while this is true in this story, there may be more to her than first meets the eye. So let's just get the story and then we'll see. So the tale goes, a poor fisherman hooked a flounder, which is a bottom-feeding fish, hauled it up from the depths of the blue sea. The flounder speaks, saying it's really an enchanted prince. Everything is speaking. Really, it's an enchanted tree, an enchanted stone, enchanted pavement, enchanted everything. Not so distant, actually. Anyway, I'm really an enchanted prince, the flounder says, and begs so pitifully for his life that the man is moved to compassion, and he releases it back into the sea. When he gets home and tells his wife, she's furious. You fool. If it spoke, she has a point, it was a magic fish. Go back and tell it that it owes us and must fulfill our wishes for you having freed it. Tell it I want a nice cottage to live in instead of this little hovel. So the fisherman returns to the shore of what's now a turbid sea. It had been clear blue before, and calls for the flounder. And when it rises to the surface and hears his request, it says her wish is granted. So back home he goes, and he finds his wife waiting at the door of a nice little cottage. Time moves on. One day the wife says, how can we be satisfied with this meager place? Go back and tell the flounder we want something more splendid. So back again he trudges to the sea and calls. And when the flounder hears his request, it says she has what she wants. And indeed, when he gets home, he finds they now live in a palace. Isn't this everyone's dream? Things keep working and things improve, and we have a little apartment, and then we get a little house, and then we get a bigger house, and we get a newer car, and, sounds good. So soon but you can see what's coming, all right? There's a progressive vision here, and you can see what's coming. Soon they live in an even more splendid palace. But in time, that too it's just not enough. You know what I mean? I mean, we could do better, right? Yeah, let's put gold up on the walls. Let's tear down the east wing and rebuild it with 2 stories. I mean, come on. Yeah, in time, it's just not enough. So, in time, she becomes the empress. And now their home is a palace made of gold. I mean, we're dealing with an old story here. And yet, this could be a news article. It's crazy. There it is, human desire. But phooey! After a while, even a palace of gold won't do. You know that. You can see what's coming, can't you? How could this be enough? That's quite a question, isn't it? Somebody who already has a palace of gold. How could this be enough? There's something very human, terribly human about this. How could this be enough? How could this be the end of all my wishing? There must be more. So she demands to become Pope, which in the story's terms means spiritual director of the world. But that won't do. How could such a limited fulfillment truly satisfy? Impossible. And one day she notices the sun shining brightly, the clouds racing across the sky. She sees the moon glowing at night and the stars shining. And the next day she says, go back to that flounder and tell it, I want to be the almighty God who makes the clouds fly, the wind blow, the sun and moon rise and set. The fisherman heads back to the sea, but oh, he's frightened now. The once clear blue sea is dark and foul, the wind howling chaotically, polluted waves slamming against the rocks. His heart pounds and pounds as he calls for the flounder, and when it rises from the dark sea, he stammers out his awful request. Wham! Next thing he knows, he's back at their old hovel of a cabin, his wife standing in the doorway, everything exactly the way it was when it all first began. Only now, like Mandata, the Buddha in a past life, maybe they've come full circle and have discovered for themselves that no matter how much we get, desire is still desire, and its nature is never to be satisfied. Perhaps this knowledge has changed them. Perhaps now they too, having explored a wrong road to its end, might be free to seek and find true happiness. And where and what is that? And there it is, the wisdom of the Buddha in a so-called fairy tale. But what about the wife? In the Grimm's tale, she's a relentless egotist. And yet, we have to hand it to her, she had the guts to go the route and do what, given half a chance, deep down perhaps, we'd all want to do, if we dared. Desire it all, claim it all, declare openly, unrestrained by social niceties, I want it all. Blake wrote, more is the cry of a mistaken soul. Less than all cannot satisfy. More is the cry of a mistaken soul. Less than all cannot satisfy. That's from his piece, There Is No Natural Religion. The Buddha owned personally only a robe and a begging bowl, yet was said to be the richest man in the universe. Less than all cannot satisfy. Why not? Why not? Deep bows to the fisherman's wife who so bravely took the fall for us all and compassionately opened the way. Like Mandata, she demonstrates where desiring leads or doesn't. Interestingly, one of the 33 traditional forms or transformations in Buddhist tradition of Kannon, Bodhisattva of compassion, is none other than that of a fisherman's wife. How about that? Classical Buddhist tradition says that an unimaginably deep past lies behind each one of us, and that a journey of who knows how many lifetimes has brought us to where we each of us are, right now. Through attention to the practice of Zazen, attention to the count, the breath, the koan, we release a million years of tears. The smell of incense, the sound of footsteps, the ting of the bell, the drip of rain, the vroom of traffic, the caw of a crow tells us we are home, not simply because of what's now there, but paradoxically because of what now isn't. Indeed, from the first, never really was. We'll stop here and recite our great vows for all.